You can now get a 30-day trial to experience The Athletic for free. Visit the link in the description below to try it now.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm an analyst for Tifo. Today we're going to be looking at Inter Milan, how they're currently playing under Simone Inzaghi. I know it's very early on in the season, but still worth having a look. Because, obviously, big changes. They've lost Antonio Conte, who's arguably the best manager in Serie A last season, took them to the title, and Romelu Lukaku, who was definitely the best striker in Serie A. So we're going to see how they've adapted, what changes have been made, and why it's so far working really well. So Inter Milan this season so far, they've only played 2 games. They've beaten Genoa 4-0, they've beaten Verona 3-1 away. This is the setup that they used in that Verona game. So we've got Dzeko here, who's new. Martinez, he's not. Calhanoglu, he's new. Darmian as well has come into the side. But before we look at what they're doing with this current setup, let's have a quick look at how they were playing before under Antonio Conte. Now, there are a few personnel changes, and this is obviously one of the big things. So we take off Darmian here, and we bring on Achraf Hakimi, who's now tearing it up at PSG. Lukaku will come in here for Dzeko, and Christian Eriksen here for Calhanoglu. So under Conte, Inter were very much a sort of press and possess type team. That's an expression that I think maybe Jonathan Wilson coined, but it's a good one. So very heavy emphasis on retaining the ball, looking to defend quite emphatically on the front foot. This back three here, Bastoni, De Vrij and Skriniar, very, very good at playing out from the back. And so Inter would, generally speaking, in their sort of low build-up, you'd have your centre-backs splitting, Brozovic would sort of drop in here, and you'd be able to create these sort of passing patterns here. Now, one of the things that Inter did was they were quite patient with their build-up, and that was because what they wanted to do was generate these overloads between the lines. And one of the ways that they did this was by Eriksen dropping off here to form almost a kind of double pivot with Brozovic. And then Barella here would be sort of whizzing around, pushing up here, particularly trying to create numerical superiority on this right-hand side. And that's because the key guy in this system, like Inter's star man, is pretty obvious to everybody who knows anything about Serie A last season, was Lukaku. Now, Lukaku as a striker has this tendency to drift out to the right-hand side. He's very, very good at linking play. He likes to drop off, take the ball into feet, play it out, spin and attack, which, as people saw perhaps against Arsenal, he did to Pablo Mari really successfully. So what Inter were always seeking to do, if we can get this, here is to build these sort of passing triangles on this side. You'd have the ball would be progressed up here, maybe one of the wide centre-backs, get it into this sort of area and then start to draw the opposition over. And then Lukaku could begin that peel into the middle. Perisic as well, very, very dangerous cutting in on this on this left-hand side, sorry. So, as teams often do when they emphasize build up on one hand side, Belgium were doing this during the Euro, for example, also with Lukaku, is it sucks the opposition towards this side of the pitch, and that leaves space for whoever is free here. When you've got this good solid double pivot as well, you're able to progress the ball. And Inter were able to play quite successfully on the break too, because one of the things that Lukaku is really good at is running in behind, taking advantage of space when a defensive line is pushed up. So again, if the double pivot's quite deep here, Perisic advanced here, Lukaku is looking to drop off. He's looking to take these sorts of passes in here, and then maybe find support here from Barella, who's pushing up, and then he's running in behind, or he can just take it direct and finish on his own. So what this did was it created an Inter who could play out from the back, who could retain possession, who had really comfortable ball-playing double pivot in front of a back three, who were also good with the ball, who could bring it out a little bit. This allowed them to be measured in their low build-up. Once they get into the attacking phase, all of a sudden you've got the pace and direct running of Lukaku, but also that ability to hold the ball up, play nice, cute little touches, release Hakimi on the right-hand side, who was the best wing-back in Serie A last season. You've got Perisic making these runs in from the left-hand side. So Inter would really kind of explode into life in this upper half of the pitch. And that made them really, really dangerous, because when you've got a very, very solid defensive setup and the ability to retain possession and suffocate the life out of other teams by moving the ball around, and then at the other end you've got this pace and intelligence of movement, that makes a team very, very difficult to beat, which is why they won Serie A. Now, as we've mentioned, a couple of these key people, Hakimi, Lukaku particularly, they've gone. So Simone Inzaghi, who's come in as the manager after 5 seasons at Lazio, where he did use a back three quite a lot actually, he's had to adapt to new personnel and kind of tweak the style. So let's have a look at what they're doing now and sort of really bring out these differences between how Dzeko is playing as a striker and how Lukaku was playing as a striker. As we've said, Simone Inzaghi has come in from Lazio, and while Lazio are a good, solid, upper mid-table team in Serie A, obviously taking over from a manager who's just won Lo Scudetto with this side is pretty daunting, I think. Simeone's been helped by the fact that, as I said, in those 5 years in Lazio, he did play with a back three quite a lot. Usually using either a 3-5-1-1, which is the setup that we saw in Inter's first game under Inzaghi against Genoa, where Stefano Sensi was actually in here in this whole space rather than Lautaro Martinez. That was the setup there. And against Verona, he reverted to more of a 3-5-2. But these are systems that he is comfortable with as a coach, and crucially also the members of the Inter squad who are still there from Conte's era are also familiar with a back three. So this Bastoni, De Vrij, Skriniar lineup that we see here that they've gone into the season with, very much how they finished the end of last season. And a lot of those movements are the same. And that makes a lot of sense. It's a kind of good transitional coaching appointment, but massive adjustment in terms of the type of frontman that they're playing with. So where Lukaku has this tendency to pull out to the right-hand side, he's really effective on the counter, he's really good at dropping off and linking play, Dzeko's skills are much more in terms of holding up the ball, being more of a kind of orthodox target man. And so Inzaghi, while he's working off a relatively similar template, he's made some really, really intelligent little changes that are really bringing out the best in Inter. It's also worth saying a couple of things in terms of the numbers. So again, with the caveat that this is really, really early days in Serie A, they've only played 2 games at the time that I'm recording this video. Inter's long balls have gone up significantly. Their direct passing has gone up significantly per 90 from last season. They're also taking significantly more shots than they did. Conte was perfectly happy to be patient, knowing that he had these players that could kind of suddenly produce like a burst of pace and get in behind and do something tricky and clever. Simone Inzaghi is much more about a kind of really vertical, more aggressive style of attack, and that really pivots around Dzeko. So let's look at the setup here with Dzeko. We'll keep Martinez here as this kind of dropping off player. Now, one of the crucial things is Calhanoglu coming in here instead of Christian Eriksen. Now, Eriksen, like I said, had this tendency to drop back and play with Brozovic in a kind of slightly staggered double pivot. Obviously, really, really good passer of the ball, able to create with through balls, little dinks over the top to the wing backs. Calhanoglu is capable of doing that, but he's much more aggressive in this formation. So what you get is the centre backs here sort of create this like, let's make one. They make this sort of diamond shape here with Brozovic. And this is the platform really for everything that happens going forwards. So the wing backs, pretty aggressive. Darmian will tuck in a little bit more and maybe push a little bit less high because Perisic is a very aggressive player. He's almost like a winger playing as a wing back. But what you get instead here is the creation of this sort of little triangle really between these midfielders and a striker in the 10 spot. And that can be a midfielder. Like I said, it was Stefano Sensi in the first game. And Dzeko here is the pivot around which all of this stuff moves. So what Dzeko's really good at doing, his kind of threatening ability, is to force opposition centre-backs to retreat, because they know he's really good in the air. They also know he's quite slow. So as he's kind of chugging towards the opposition goal, they're going to go with him, right? He's not going to burst in behind. They don't need to worry too much about leaving lots of space in there. But they also know that if a cross comes in, and because Inter have wing-backs that like to get forwards and Barella who can pop up in the half space, that's going to happen quite a lot. So they want to get tight to him. What this does, as we sort of force these guys back here, is it creates a lot of space in this dangerous area of the pitch here, which some people refer to as zone 14 or whatever. It's this opportunity to either create by looking out wide for these passes here, or to have these runners. So what will happen is the ball will either come in really quite direct to Dzeko, maybe from Brozovic, maybe from Skriniar here, and he'll control the ball, he'll hold it up. Sometimes literally he like chests it forwards to a player who's running on. And then these guys here are looking to make dynamic runs all the time. So they are running in behind Dzeko, or they're running into the space that he has created by causing the opposition line to back off. So Dzeko is much more static. He's not dropping towards his own goal in the same way that Lukaku was. He does do that a little bit, but that's much more, that space is filled by players pushing forwards and being aggressive, rather than players dropping off and trying to control that space, moving in from where they were standing as strikers. And that means that this Inter side are pretty front foot. You know, they're looking to get the ball forwards quickly. They're looking to play vertically. As Dzeko is sort of seeing the ball coming towards him, he's backing off, and these midfielders are making runs towards him. And that's why, particularly against Genoa, I noticed they were taking an awful lot of shots from this sort of area, like just in, oh no, I don't want to do that, just inside the box or just outside the box. And that's because Dzeko's physical ability, his ability to play the ball forwards with little knockdowns from his head, or with his chest, or even taking the ball to feet and laying it back, he has this great physical strength and presence. And what's really exciting about this for Inter Milan is that in Çalhanoğlu they've got someone who's incredibly good at shooting from distance, scored a really, really great goal against Genoa. So that, by unlocking this position here and not crowding it with strikers, you can really take advantage of that. With Nicolo Barella, who was one of the standout players for Italy during the Euro, again, you have this ability to carry the ball, to run dynamically, to create little 1-2 opportunities with Matteo Darmian here on the right-hand side. So you get a pass out here, Barella makes this run, the ball comes around here. It just adds this degree of impetus to Inter's midfield runners. And instead of, you know, pulling the opposition defence forwards and then looking to spring in behind them, it's about forcing the opposition defence back and carving out this kind of space here. And because Inter have recruited well in terms of Çalhanoğlu, in terms of Dzeko, and because they have already got players like Barella or Stefano Sensi, who's come back from injury and looks really sharp again, and also Perisic, who can make these interior runs. He's one of the players who's actually basically doing a very similar kind of thing. This makes them very, very dangerous when they're on the front foot. And because Inzaghi is happy to play a much, much more vertical style of football, because he's less preoccupied with building up slowly from the back and with maintaining possession than Antonio Conte was, who's maybe a little more defence first, Inter can like blow teams away with this aggressive style. And at the back, because this system is still very similar, because these four players, Brozovic, Bastoni, De Vrij, and Skriniar are the same, there is that level of understanding, that defensive solidity. This kind of diamond shape just locks down the centre of the pitch, and it means that Inter can progress and attack. Now, whether they'll be able to sustain that across the course of this season, it's really hard to say, because basically Juventus not winning Serie A is kind of an aberration in the last 10 or 15 years. So Simone Inzaghi, he's not coached at this level before, he's not been subject to this kind of pressure before, but the early signs of a still relatively young coach taking a system he's familiar with, adapting it to players who already understand that kind of system, making the most of the players that he's got and tweaking the system to get the best out of them. It does look really, really promising for Inter Milan at this stage. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Obviously, if you like the kind of stuff we're doing, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, do all of those generic YouTube-y things that people are supposed to say at the end of videos, and we'll be back with more stuff very, very soon. Thank you.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.